Hi everyone and welcome to the next lesson in National 5 Biology. Last lesson we went over animal cells and plant cells and their ultrastructures, and today we're going to be going over bacteria cells and fungal cells. So to begin with, a unicellular organism consists of one single cell. Okay, so uni means one, and cellular obviously means cell, so one cell. Uni, like a unicycle, has one wheel, so uni means one and unicellular is one single cell. The two most common types of unicellular organisms are bacteria cells and fungal cells, so fungi, and they're the two that we're going to look at in this lesson. Bacteria cells also have cell walls, but their cell walls are made of a different material than plant cell walls. So plant cell walls are made out of cellulose. Bacteria cell walls are made out of something different. They have no nucleus, and instead they have a free-floating bacterial chromosome, and they have plasmids, which are small rings of genetic information. These function instead of the normal nucleus in, say, an animal or a plant cell. So they have the same jobs as a nucleus, but instead there is the bacterial chromosome and the plasmids, which are small rings of circular genetic information. And this is what our bacteria cell looks like. So to begin with, up the top here, this first arrow, we have the cell wall. And just like the cell wall in plant cells, it protects the cell, it provides support, and it provides structure. Again, just like the walls in a house. Over here, on the right hand side, this is our first ring of genetic information. And then this is our plasmid. Now your plasmids obviously are rings of genetic information. The arrow down below that is pointing to this little dot that is floating inside of the cytoplasm, and that is the ribosome. Okay, and the ribosomes are responsible for protein synthesis. Over to the left hand side again, this is pointing to the big stringy thing that is floating about in the middle here. And that is your bacterial chromosome. So it's a free-floating chromosome. Usually chromosomes are contained within the nucleus of a cell, so you don't see them floating about like that. But because there is no nucleus in a bacteria cell, we have the free-floating bacterial chromosome. Over to the right-hand side again, we've got the line that is on the inside, which is our cell membrane. And the cell membrane controls what can enter and exit the cell. And then finally, the stuff that everything is floating about in is our cytoplasm, the site of chemical reactions. This is just a quick summary of the new organelles that we have introduced in bacteria cells, the bacterial chromosome and the plasmid. And the function of the bacterial chromosome is that it controls cell activities and stores genetic information. And then plasmids are additional circular rings of genetic information. Next we have our fungal cells, and they have some of the same organelles as your plant and animal cells, and they also have a cell wall. Now this cell wall is again made of a different substance to both bacteria and plant cell walls. So it's not cellulose and it's also not the same material that is used for cell walls in bacteria cells, so it's completely different again. And this is quite a detailed diagram of what a fungal cell looks like. So in the last lesson, I explained that ribosomes can be found floating about in the cytoplasm or attached to these big stringy lines. And that is an example here in A. So A is a ribosome, or several ribosomes. And they're the little dots that are attached to these big stringy lines coming off of the nucleus. So they can be found floating about inside of your cytoplasm, of your cell, or they can be found attached to these stringy things. And you don't need to know what they're called, so don't worry about them. I'm only telling you this so that if you see a diagram of a cell and they're asking you what this organelle is, they'll be pointing to the little dots, the little bumps on the lines, and that would be your ribosomes, which again are the site of protein synthesis. Now B is pointing to the line on the outside, so that is our cell wall. C is a line on the inside, which is the cell membrane, controlling what enters and exits our cell. Up here we have D, which is the mitochondria, which is the site of aerobic respiration, which is a chemical reaction by which cells make their energy. And you may have noticed that in the last cell, the bacteria cell, there was no mitochondria. So bacteria cells do not have mitochondria. They are only found in fungal, plant and animal cells. E is our nucleus. F is pointing to the cytoplasm, the site of all chemical reactions. Now G is pointing to this big sort of blob shape sitting in the middle of our cell, and that is the vacuole. So plant and fungal cells both have a vacuole, and the vacuole is storing cell sap, so that's sugary liquid, and it's also helping to maintain the shape of this fungal cell. And then down the bottom we have H, which is another example of a ribosome. So this cell shows both examples of where you can find a ribosome. They can be attached to the strings like in A, or they can be free floating in the cytoplasm like H. And this is a summary of the important points that I want you to remember on top of the organelles. So bacteria and fungal cells are unicellular organisms, which means that they are made up of one cell. So you wouldn't find a bacteria that is made of 2 or 3 or 4 cells. They're only made of one cell. Bacteria have plasmids and bacterial chromosomes instead of a nucleus, and the fungal and bacteria cell walls are made of different materials to each other and to plant cells. I hope that this lesson has been helpful for you guys, whether you're revising or you're learning something new altogether. The next lesson that we go on to will be talking about stains and using microscopes and magnification of microscopes. I hope this has been helpful. I'll see you guys in the next lesson.